Hey, this is Leanna Hafer, bringing you a preview of Humankind, Amplitude's upcoming historical 4X game. We got to see some new stuff in the ancient and classical era we haven't seen before, as you can see by my classical era Celtic civilization here. This build is also running on Google Stadia, so you'll see there is a little bit of compression artifacting. I have gigabit internet, so your results may vary, but it's running on what looks like pretty close to max settings on Stadia, and I was fairly impressed with the performance. There's a little bit of interface lag, but for a turn-based strategy game, that's not that bad. So I've got my main city, Kermos, up here. We've built a couple of wonders. We have two other civilizations on this continent with us: the Hittites down here in orange, and then up in the north, I believe, are the Greeks. There's also a lot of these, you'll see these gray things are independent peoples, which are kind of a cool new take on barbarians that we'll talk about a little bit. But here's my Stonehenge, my statue of Zeus, my beautiful capital, and I've sort of been building extensions off of this along with wonders to increase the tile yield improvements and stuff. It's sort of similar to districts in Civ 6, except you can have they can overlap a little bit, and they have to be built adjacent to existing extensions. So your city kind of looks contiguous for the most part, other than little outlying mines and stuff. So these cities actually did not originally have these names because I started out as the Nubians, because you pick a culture for every era in Humankind. So I actually renamed these cities to something more Celtic sounding. It won't do that for you automatically. I just kind of did that with my own linguistic nerdery. So yeah, we started out as the Nubians. We still have some Nubian looking buildings, but we eventually became the Celts. Here's the Hittite capital down here in Hattusa. As you can see, they're getting a lot of production from these mountains and things, whereas we're a little bit more agrarian over here. And then our Greek friends up here in the north. I do say friends, I was able to make allies with both of the other civilizations on the continent pretty easily, although they are on casual difficulty for this scenario, which basically says they won't attack you. So these are the Dacians. They were a major thorn in my side. You can see that these independent people, you can actually patronize them. It's a little bit like a combination of barbarians and city-states, if you're familiar with Civilization. They have a personality. They happen to be violent, but because I'm patronizing them right now, they won't attack me. And then they are also considered to be at their zenith, which, independent peoples will settle down and they will grow, but then they can also go into decline and disappear from the map if you don't patronize them. So even if you don't conquer them, they will kind of go away on their own eventually, which is kind of an interesting life cycle. The other thing you can do, though, from patronizing is to eventually annex them. So if you see Nokos down here, that actually used to be an independent people's city that was bordering me, and I patronized them. I poured enough gold into them that I was able to just fully annex them into my civilization. Of course, other civs can compete with you as well. The other thing we got to see that we haven't really seen before is the diplomacy system. So here we have the Hittites, and they are offering me an alliance. I'm going to go ahead and accept that, because
this will be a blessing for all parties. I accept.
Didn't have much of an army at this point. So you can see they have personality traits. Casual is kind of like the difficulty level. You can tell this game was made by French people. Population being a disposable resource for cruel. You can kind of buy stuff with population the same way you might buy stuff with gold. If you don't want to wait for it to finish building, you can actually expend your people's lives to get it done faster. And then they're adaptive. We're bound because we have an alliance. That's kind of their overall diplomatic attitude toward us. And then we also have the option to make different trade deals with them, which works a little bit more like we're just buying their available resources. And the price in gold of doing that is based on the type of transportation network you have. So eventually, once you can trade by sea, that actually facilitates trade because it makes trade cheaper for these strategic and luxury resources. The treaties you have are partly based on, like if I didn't have an alliance with them, I would have slightly different treaties to pick from. And then also as the game goes on, I have more options to pick from here. It's not always a binary A or B choice. So we currently have tactical cooperation, but if we wanted to, we could sign a shared logistics treaty, which would actually allow our units to resupply and heal in each other's territory. The other interesting thing is early on in the game, you can have skirmishes with another civilization as long as you're not standing in either civilization's territory. If we're in unsettled territory or if we're in an independent people's territory, our units can fight each other and it will upset them, but we don't actually have to go to war. So you can kind of have these interesting little border conflicts. Now, crises are probably the most interesting part of this system. We currently have a grievance with them, which is because one of our territories is under their cultural influence. We put this demand on the table. They can ask us to remove it, and we don't have to. But the longer that it stays there, the longer that we have this grievance against them because they're spreading their culture into our lands, and we're saying we don't like that, the more our morale against them will build up. And the higher your morale against somebody is when you go to war with them, the more willing your people will be wanting to fight against them, and the longer they'll be willing to fight against them. So as you can see, is they don't have a grievance against us, so their morale against us is at 50 out of 100, which means their people are not going to have very strong incentive to go to war and especially stay at war with us. But because we've held this grievance against them, we've held this grudge for so long, we're going to get a bonus when we're fighting them, and while that will slowly tick down, we're already at 88 out of 100. Our people are not going to get tired of that war and start to lower our stability very quickly, like what might happen if they declared war on us. So it's kind of like the Casus Belli system in Paradox games, except you can level up your Casus Belli. I think this is one of the coolest parts of what we've seen of this system so far, and I'm really interested to see what kind of crises and demands and grievances you can get later on in the game, because of course in the ancient classical era it's pretty straightforward. We don't want their culture coming into our lands. If our culture becomes dominant in their lands, we might be able to make a claim that that city should actually be ours, or religious conflict can be another one. Very much looking forward to seeing what's to come. Of course, religious conflict is not really an issue for us here because Celtic shamanism is the dominant religion for almost the entire continent. There are some little pockets of holdouts here, but we designed this. When you get new followers, your religion will level up from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. Just based on how many total people follow it in the world, and at each level you can pick a different bonus. We don't like stealing, we like pilgrimages, we don't like getting drunk. At first, it's just kind of these generic bonuses, and then actually at level 2 and level 3, you can choose to take another generic bonus and stay shamanist or polytheist, or you can actually pick to found a historical religion, and then that counts as your trait pick for that era. They have historical names, but they give an identical benefit. It's just you are opting into being an organized religion, and you can pick any of the ones for that level that have not been claimed yet. And they give you more faith and the ability to build a holy site at the expense of picking another shamanist or polytheist bonus and just staying a less organized religion, which you can also shape a little bit through their civics system as well. So it's a little bit of new stuff, a little bit of stuff we've already seen before, but the religion system seems to be going on that sort of general building blocks model that we're familiar with from other 4X games, possibly. Also, these guys are really good mountain climbers. If you see my people just climbing that cliff at the bottom of the screen here. So anyway, how did we become the Celts? As you can see, the city is Kerma, not Kermos. We've reached the classical era by, this is going back into time several turns, by earning a number of era stars, which are kind of like mini achievements that let you progress to the next era. So we could transcend and stay as the Nubians. We don't get any new bonuses for the classical era, but we get a bonus to fame, which is kind of like your score that determines who wins at the end. But we could pick the Axumites, the Greeks, the Carthaginians. We ended up going with the Celts. I also tried out the Goths. Some of them are more militaristic. Some of them are more focused on agriculture or science or production. They all have at least one unique improvement and one unique unit. So yeah, we went with the Celts here, and then it's going to show us a little intro first to the new era, and then to the new civ that we've picked, which is kind of cool.
As urban centers grow, both ideas and sewage are generated at a record pace. Arts and sciences flourish as military tactics and mathematical equations become as coveted as physical goods. Empires struggle to control these intangibles, however, as some might trouble their stability. So these are the renowned Celts. Whether or not their soldiers are naked, they are armed and dangerous.
So yeah, you'll see my basic housing buildings change, but my capital structure actually stays the same, and any wonders and unique districts from my previous culture that I built will stay the same. So over time, your civ will kind of look like an amalgam of all of the cultures you've accumulated, which is pretty cool. For more on Humankind, keep it right here on IGN.